Welcome to Key Tech. Please describe this channel if you are interested in today's video. In the past 2 years, Apple CEO Cook has appeared in China many times. On the surface, it was to highlight the importance of the Greater China market and maintain the original saying that Apple cannot do without China. But deep down in Cook's heart, it seems that this is not the case. Anyone with a discerning eye can see that if Apple really cannot do without the Chinese supply chain, Cook will not insist on transferring the supply chain to Vietnam, India and other markets. On the surface, it seems to be to save money, but in fact it is to disperse production capacity, thereby getting rid of dependence on Chinese companies. According to market feedback, the current overall yield rate of Indian factories is only 50%, which is difficult to meet actual quality control requirements. However, Apple does not seem to have given up on continuing to expand into this market, and even promised to sell more iPhones in order to encourage local foundries. 16 will be produced in India, and it is very likely that the research and development of iPhone 17 will also be done locally. But surprisingly, not long ago, India went to Indonesia to inspect the market and also promised to build a factory there. Obviously, Apple is quite active in finding alternative markets, and in recent years, Apple has there is almost no expansion plan in the market. Recently, news has come from the fruit chain again. From the 2023 supply chain list, it was learned that 4 companies, Isha, Jingyan Technology, Mangson, and Duran Electronics, have been kicked out of the supply chain. Of course, in order not to so obviously, Apple has also added 8 companies including Baudi Company, Limited, Zhechuan Iron and Steel, and Sinopec Huawei Technology to the supply chain. 4 companies were kicked out and 8 new companies were added. If analyzed purely from data, it seems that Chinese companies have received preferential treatment, but this is not the case through actual data analysis. According to data surveyed by professional institutions, although mainland manufacturers account for 26% of Apple's supply chain, the value they contribute is only about 2%. It can be said that Cook has completed the replacement of the core supply chain, which is equivalent to a transformation. Not shifting supply chains no longer matters. Apple's real core components have long been replaced by companies in Europe, America, Japan and Korea. Chip supplies come from Qualcomm, Intel and self-developed chips, while screens and lens modules have long been replaced by Japanese and Korean companies. From strict in a sense, Apple can replace Chinese manufacturers at any time and find new partners immediately. Every time he comes to China, Cook greets him with a smile and gives people the impression that human beings and animals are harmless, but in fact, his thoughtfulness is unparalleled. After the return of Huawei's high-end mobile phones, he has increased the number of visits to China. Times, obviously trying to show affinity to please the fruit fans. The official media has long called for getting rid of Apple dependence, and now it seems that there is still some truth. For example, O-Film was almost facing bankruptcy after being kicked out of the supply chain. Fortunately, domestic mobile phone manufacturers rise. It was saved after the corresponding order was given. Cooperating with Apple is equivalent to becoming a subsidiary. Everything must be according to their standards, but it does not receive adequate treatment. There is no guarantee in long-term orders, and there is no sincerity in cooperation. It's time for Chinese companies to wake up and not be led by Cook. After Huawei solved the problem of high-end chip supply, Apple is no longer the dominant player in the field of high-end mobile phones. Huawei confidently adopted a pre-release plan and once overtook Apple in market popularity. It is impossible to say who will win. The most eye-catching thing is the rise of Huawei. Faced with challenges from competitors such as Huawei, Apple is obviously feeling pressure. Cook frequently visits China to try to stabilize the confidence of Apple fans, but this also hints at intensifying market competition. Huawei has solved the problem of high-end chip supply, and the market popularity once surpassed Apple, which has brought greater challenges to Apple. Apple's supply chain adjustments have also drawn attention to Chinese companies. Although Chinese companies have been kicked out of the supply chain list, data shows that their value only accounts for about 2% of the total value of the supply chain. In fact, Apple's core components have long been replaced by European, American, Japanese and Korean companies, and its reliance on Chinese companies is not high. At the same time, the rise of domestic mobile phone manufacturers has also had an impact on supply chain adjustments. Their emergence has provided Apple with more alternatives. In this supply chain crisis, technology giants are coming and going, and competition is fierce. In the future, the landscape of the technology market may undergo huge changes, and it is worth waiting and watching by China to see how Apple will respond to this change. This supply chain battle will open a new chapter, and China will wait and see to witness the competition between technology giants. What do you think of this?